Oh my goodness. Welcome again to another edition of the Bitchuation Room podcast. Back in the live stream, back in the studio, back not live, from the future, from the past, speaking to you in the future or your present, depending on if you're here. I don't know what time is anymore. I've got COVID, trying to avoid getting long COVID. I know you're saying, wow, COVID never looked better. And I agree. It's amazing. No, it actually sucked real bad for a while. Also because I forgot what being sick was like. And I was like, oh my God, do I have to watch West Side Story now? And I'm like, yes, I do. That's how you're going to get better. And so I feel good. I am on the road to recovery, hopefully. And we've got such a good show. It has been a couple weeks since we've done a show. Our last show was, of course, live in Brooklyn, where maybe one of you gave me COVID, or maybe I gave you COVID. Anyway, sorry if I did. And I had such a good time. So if anyone went and if you guys listened, I hope you enjoyed it. And just thank you so much for coming out and supporting the show. It was a hell of a lot of work, but a hell of a lot of fun. And yeah, thanks again for everyone who bought tickets and those who tuned in live. But today's show, we've got comedian Trey Crowder for the first time on the Bitchuation Room. Super excited to have him for the hour. We've got executive director for Coalition for Civil Freedoms, Lena Al-Arian is here. I want to talk to her about the, lasting legacy, continued legacy, especially in the Muslim American community of the war on terror. We are marking now almost 20 years since the beginning of the war in Iraq. Always a fun time when I remember where I was when I saw images coming out of Abu Ghraib and being like, really, America, fuck this. We also have a very special edition of Sex Elect Overthrow. We're bringing it back because it's our fave, right? Sex Elect Overthrow. This time, it's the con artists edition. Oh yeah, we're talking about Anna Delvey, okay? And we're talking about whether she was worse than the Tinder swindler, or whether Elizabeth Holmes with her disgusting turtlenecks, whether she was bad too. So we're going to get into all that. And for the patrons and for the people who can support this show, once again, completely independent show, has no advertisers at the moment. Mama's still working hard on getting those. Still trying to get, cannabis-infused dog biscuits to buy ads on my show. But until that point, this is a Patreon-supported, people-run, people-fueled program. And in exchange for your generosity every month, when you become a patron at patreon.com/bitchuationroom, you get an extra 10 minutes of content, sometimes even 15, sometimes 20 minutes, depends. So Trey and I are going to talk about what's going down in Florida. I mean, many things. I mean, mostly the whole state is going down, right? Like, just technically in terms of sea level rise. But Ron DeSantis and Disney are at each other's, they're not really at each other's throats, but there's a little bit of a falling out, if you will. So we're going to get into that. I'm really interested, in what you guys have to say about that, and just sort of getting into these details of Disney trying to take a moral stand and whether they have a leg to stand on when it comes to this so-called Don't Say Gay bill. So we're going to get into that. DeSantis, once again, fucking scoring crazy points with right-wingers for calling Disney woke. Anywho, if you're here, hey, why don't you like the stream right now? If you like the stream already, subscribe to the show. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Honestly, what do you got, a limit on how many YouTube channels you're going to subscribe to? No. If you're here on Twitch, sup? Thank you for taking a break from gaming. And if you're listening as a podcast, make sure to give this podcast 5 stars. It means the world, and your reviews are so sweet. I read every single one of them. And I wanted to say that the cool thing that's been happening is that the Bitchuation Room is now part of the TYT podcast fam. So I've moved over to Acast. And now you can just find me more easily there. And you can listen to all the shows that I have done, obviously with TYT fam and hosts as well. So that's exciting news. And finally, if you do want to tip the show, but you don't want to become a patron, that's okay. I understand. Venmo, TBR-Live, Cash App, TBR Live. And without further ado, let's talk about what we are bitching about. Oi. This is What Are You Bitching About? Okay, so I have dos cosas. I am not going to speak like that the whole time. Like a chick who's proud that she took Spanish in high school. But I have two small things that are actually quite long. But the first thing is this. We're in a moment right now where inflation is on the rise, right? Gas prices are supposedly on the rise as well. They are in some places and others less so. Obviously, oil companies could easily drop those prices, but they want money. And we've got supply chain issues. In terms of getting all kinds of goods, right? And it's putting the hurt on a lot of people, specifically American consumers. That hurt is not comparable to real hurt, as in, someone suffering war in Ukraine. But, it sucks. And especially when Americans haven't gotten a raise, we don't have a $15 minimum wage nationally, which honestly, even if we did, it should be 25. But so I was doing some reading, no big deal. And I love the American Prospect. By the way, I started writing their back page column, which no, it's not that kind of a back page, but no, it's just like a humorous column. It's humorous. But their last issue was all about the supply chain. And essentially what you realize when you learn about the supply chain is not only have we shipped everything to China and made ourselves overly reliant on that country, which is oh so funny at a time when we're trying to get China to put pressure on Russia. But if they don't, what are we gonna do? Fucking nothing. What can we do? Like they have us by the balls economically, but not because, and again, my reaction is not based on xenophobia. It's not based on a knee-jerk right-wing China, this or that. It's the broad bipartisan consensus to allow corporations to do whatever the hell they want at the expense of workers and consumers. At the expense of workers, because of course, we're talking about outsourcing. We're talking about going to the lowest common denominator, not, going to China, which has horrible labor and environmental standards, but also consumers in terms of the way that our supply chain is set up, which is not to create any kind of surplus, right? There's no warehouse that stores stuff. It's just on demand. Everything is like on demand logistics, they call it. And that maximizes profits for shareholders. But and so long as everything's going fine, meaning there's no pandemic, there's no wildfires or like rapid sea, storm surges, which like when are there ever those? So long as everything's fine, you can basically meet consumer demand, blah, blah, blah. Well, fucking nothing is fine now, except instead of fixing the supply chain, corporations, trade groups, all of the same MFers who've been screwing us over this whole time are like, ooh, I know. We'll just raise prices. We'll just pass the buck to consumers. So all this to say, I'm not complaining about not getting a fucking shake weight on time or whatever I need to buy. But I am complaining that we've got such... The thing about having an oligarchy is that you at least want them to be in control. If you're going to control stuff, at least do it well. When you don't do it well is when it bothers the shit out of me. When you can't even account for things like climate change, things like, a pandemic maybe. You can't even account for an emergency situation. You've devastated manufacturing in the United States. You've shipped it elsewhere, and then you've got no plan except let's pass the buck to the consumer. That's your fucking plan. We're going to raise prices again. We're going to underpay workers. They should be grateful. So that makes me mad. Now, apparently the Biden administration is taking some small steps. So I would love to delve into this more. Maybe I can get someone who actually knows what they're talking about instead of just whining about it to come on. So I'm mad about that. And yeah, you know, as someone who eventually wants to be able to afford a home, fucking, you know, that's on my mind. Second thing that's on my mind, we're not going to talk too much about the war in Ukraine or Russia's attack on Ukraine, but I did want to say this briefly, and it's like a big point, but I'll make it quick, which is Democrats have no vision for real diplomacy and internationalism. We don't. They don't. And if we spend $700 billion, and if Biden keeps on asking and Democrats keep on approving all this money for fucking war, and then when a war is at your doorstep, oh yeah, no shit, you're not going to go into World War III because why would you? Then one has to wonder, why are we spending all of this money on missiles and tanks and F-16s or whatever, 13s, I don't know. Why are we spending all that money and our kids can't afford to go to college? Wouldn't it make more sense to give free college so we have more trained diplomats, fluent in all kinds of languages? We have an educated, you know, if we actually believed in diplomacy, right? If we actually believe we don't want World War III, because as we've said, Bush and Trump will be like, hell yeah, let's do this. I mean, Trump would be like, I don't care. I'm for bloodshed, you know? But there is no alternative vision. It's let's keep funneling money to military and warfare. And then when we're at the doorstep, we're like, well, we can't do anything with the military and warfare. I mean, we can funnel it to other people, but what a waste of, like, what a stupid thing to spend money on. What is for weapons? Even though we all know full well that we don't want a nuclear war. Yeah. So what the fuck are we doing? What is this chicken or the egg bullshit? I'm sorry. Was that short? COVID's made me madder. All right, you guys. With that, let's bring in my guest for the hour. This man has truly just one of the nicest voices ever, and I just want to hear him speak. But he's also a stand-up comic from Salina, Tennessee. He's been a guest on Real Time with Bill Maher, probably one of the best highlights of that show. He's co-authored of the book, The Liberal Redneck Manifesto, Dragging Dixie Out of the Dark. Please welcome Trey Crowder.
Hey, that's very, you're going to give me the vapors talking about my voice like that. I feel like I can't live up to it, but thanks for having me.
Give me the vapors?
Yeah.
Gonna open the show with like a hella Southern reference. Just
well,
like,
you were being awful sweet. That's why. That's what happens. Be fanning myself over here.
I said hella Southern because I'm matching your Southern with my Northern California. So, yeah, that's how that works. Trey, what are you? Instead of how are you? It's really what are you bitching about? That's what we do on this show. So
yeah, well, you know, I'm gonna take a turn from what you were talking about. You said it could be apolitical, so I'm going to take it very literal and honestly here. What I've been literally bitching about this entire weekend, as my wife would attest, is a little thing called plantar fasciitis. You know what that is?
Yes.
So I didn't know this, but
I never heard it pronounced that way. But yeah,
how do you say it? I even looked it up on Google before I came on this show because I was like,
plantar fasciitis is how I want to say it. I'm sorry.
I swear to God, before I came on here, I Googled how do you say this because I was like, that seems like something I would say dumbly, and then still said it dumbly anyway. But you know,
no. I think you just say it fast. It's like one of the things where you just have to say fast, and then it doesn't sound weird. So I think it's plantar fasciitis.
Plantar fasciitis. Yeah. Google has lied to me. You know, you look up with the like phonetic pronunciations for things where they put like by syllables.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at it like that, it's like plantar fasciitis or whatever, and you just put it all together. I don't know. Take it up with Google. All right. I'm blaming them for this.
Well, the chat says I'm wrong. Maybe people on the podcast says maybe it is plantar fasciitis.
Okay. Well, either way, it sucks. and your foot can just stop being okay out of nowhere. In my experience, like the bottom of your foot just starts hurting.
Is it because is that just like flat feet? Is that it?
So it says that it's like, it's real common in runners and overweight people, and I don't run, so I don't know. I've been on the bike. I got a
I mean, I'm on the
Peloton.
run, but I don't
Yeah,
run.
I got a Peloton. I tried to blame it on that at first, but that don't track at all, apparently. It's like one of the few things you can keep doing even when you have it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. And it's like looking up, what can I do for this? How long is it going to last? And it's like, you could try rubbing some ice on it, stretching your foot a little bit, and probably going to be 3 to 18 months. You're going to be dealing with that roughly. And it's just one of those things. It's like, just, I don't know. I blame it on just getting older. I'm 35, but still your body just starts to fall apart, apparently.
Yeah, my mom, I mean, yeah, she is almost 80, but like you're still young, Trey. My mom has it, and this feels a little gross, but this is what she does. She gets like a frozen bottle of,
Yep.
anything, water, Coke,
Yep.
whatever, and you just roll your foot
Yep.
on it, and that's
I
supposed
did
to
that
help.
this morning. Very first thing I did when I woke up this morning was the frozen water bottle trick. And I'm saying, like, I guess that's just going to be every morning for maybe the rest of my life. Who knows? We'll see how it plays out. But anyway, I've been bitching a lot about when you're not used to your foot sucking, then your foot starts to suck. You bitch about it. You use your
Right,
foot
all
a
of a
lot.
sudden. Yeah, you do.
Like you need feet, man. Like they come in handy. They're important.
There was a comic who had someone had like a joke about like ever cancel plans because you have flat feet. like you're like,
right.
sorry,
Well, I'm gonna
I
start
can't go
doing that
out.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I do
Yeah.
know it can get better. So there's hope. I'll put you in touch with my mom.
Okay.
But let's get into the week. So a lot happened. I'm gonna do a quick overview. This was the week where 36-year-old former Trump advisor Stephen Miller, who oversaw heinous anti-immigration policies, is suing to prevent the January 6th committee from obtaining his phone records because he claims he's still on his family's plan. Like, wow, bro. Have you ever thought of like family separation for yourself? Amazon is buying MGM Studios for $8.5 million, which means actors will now be docked pay for any time off task. Okay. Bathroom breaks, line flubs, the entire Bill and Ted reboot. Sorry, Keanu, it was bad. South Carolina has reintroduced the firing squad for executions, which in the year 2022 will just be carried out by sending an inmate into any public mall or school and having them wait. Biden wants into crypto. He's having financial agencies investigate cryptocurrency and look into creating the digital dollar. So he wants to, let's understand. He wants to create an entire economy predicated on the buying and trading of invisible dollars. Like, has he heard of Wall Street? That already exists. And there are unprecedented heat waves on both poles, causing a rapid deterioration of sea ice. But we can't afford a Green New Deal. I'm very excited for armies of Greta Thunbergs to line us up all and do some firing squad executions on old people because we deserve it. For everything else, this is the week where. This was the week where the White House warned that it has no more money to stop COVID. Congress basically cut COVID prevention from its budget this week, the same week that both Barack Obama and Francesca Fiorentini test positive. Coincidence? I don't think so. All right. But this is real. So here was some of the money that was requested was $22.5 billion. But it was chiseled down to around $15 billion before it was cut entirely from the latest funding bill last week, leaving government relief efforts strained. Now, it might reappear somewhere. I don't know. It's very fun, though, considering there's like a new COVID variant spreading across Europe known as BA2, which is also coincidentally the degree you get when you graduate from DeVry University online, BA squared. What does this mean for Americans, though? What happens? The most immediate impacts of COVID relief running dry will be felt by uninsured Americans who will no longer be able to submit claims for tests or COVID treatments starting next week. Senior administration officials told reporters earlier on Tuesday, in 2 weeks, claims to cover vaccinations will also no longer be accepted, meaning the program that has been covering people without insurance throughout the pandemic will effectively end. So you know how when you get a vaccine, they're like, do you have insurance? And you don't have to put it in, but you do. That actually does charge your insurance company. But now you're going to have insurance. Otherwise, you have to pay. And I've heard that like testing kits are something like $600 a piece, which is wild. More impact. Anyone seeking monoclonal antibody treatment? Anti-vaxxers. Now that ivermectin doesn't work. You remember how they were all into the monoclonal antibody treatment? So that treatment is going to face a tougher battle starting next week because the government plans to cut supplies to states by 30%, and a new purchase for hundreds of thousands more monoclonal antibody treatments are going to be canceled. Finally, if this were any surprise, in the instance of a new variant, we got BA2, US would not have the money to buy new variant-specific vaccines for all Americans to get vaccinated if that becomes necessary. Research on new vaccines and treatments will also be affected by these cuts, including a progress on pan-coronavirus vaccine, which could protect against a range of variants. On the testing capacity, the administration says that current domestic supply will get Americans through June, despite earlier warnings that Americans would see less testing availability starting even this month. So fewer tests, fewer vaccines, less research on all that. I don't know. It's good to be old, I guess, at this point. Because if you're like over 65 and you can get your fourth one in there. I mean, I just got my fourth, the natural way.
Yeah, no, it's very typical, I feel like, of this country that we've had like a couple of months or whatever it's been of like a downturn, or it like eased up a little bit. And so then everybody was just like, we got it. We took care of that. I think we're good now. Do we really have to keep doing this? I don't think so. I mean, like, I feel like the country proved a long time ago that a huge chunk of it's just going to not do anything you're supposed to do where COVID is concerned anyway. So, this isn't really surprising. Everybody just wants to do the ostrich in the sand approach to COVID, and that's been the case since the beginning. So why switch it up now? It's really alarming, all the stuff about how it projects into the future. Like if there's a new variant that is way more dangerous and or infectious, and we'll just be screwed because of this now. I'm sure that would never happen. Not in these times would a massive catastrophe. A new variant, unforeseen, horrific consequences. I feel like we wouldn't have something like that go down. It's not totally in keeping with the past, 6 years or whatever it's been of reality. Things seem to just get worse. So I don't know why we would expect things to improve on this front, especially if we're just going to give up on trying to make them improve. So yeah, this is all great. It's fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, what's crazy is, and it's like there's a silver lining, because up until now, Biden's COVID czar has been this guy named Jeff Zients or something. And he's like a corporate executive who had no experience in public health. And his entire strategy was, we'll just browbeat people into getting vaccinated, and then that's it. Like, don't, plan for the eventual future. Don't think about, broader things you could do to mitigate COVID. Maybe paying people once again to stay home from work. It was like, no, get the economy started. Now there's a new guy, Ashish Jha, who's actually a public health expert, which is great. But it's like, welcome to your new job. There's no money. So sorry.
Right. Well,
and
it's also the way that I don't know, I'm sorry if this is cold or whatever, but I really don't care at this point. But the way that like most Republicans look at poor people, which is just like, well, just stop being, take personal responsibility for your choices and pick yourself up by your bootstraps and work harder, and then you won't be poor. I'm not going to help you out with it. You should make your own decisions and just, affect your own life, personal responsibility, that whole thing. That's pretty much how I feel about the unvaccinated, and have for a long time. It's just like, it's not my problem. Like, that's a choice you made. You should take personal responsibility for it. I don't know why it's on nobody else but you, is basically how I look at it. But what sucks about this is, if they remove the whole infrastructure, if that affects vaccine availability, so now in the future, you can't get a vaccine just because you're poor and you don't have insurance, even if you want to get one. Well, that fucks all that up. You know what I mean? I can't. That hurts my self-righteous stance on the matter in the future if they've made it to where, some people just won't be able to because we fucked up and don't have enough. And of course, it's always going to be the poor people that get fucked over the first, and then rich people will be bitching at them for dying of COVID for being poor. Yes. And it just, piles on and on. So yeah.
And then the cycle. Well, it's funny because it was like a free vaccine and free testing, and even the free masks, which of course we know had to come at after a fair amount of what the fucking media did, and Jen Psaki putting her foot in her mouth. Her sake in her mouth. I'm done. But this was like a brief little respite from what America usually does, which is not, you're gonna have to pay for that. And I'm sure you saw a lot of right wingers being like, okay, well, if the COVID vaccine is good, then how come it's free? And you're like, because it's really serious, but you have a point. And they're like, oh, and insulin's not free. And you're like, you've got a good point. This is why we need universal health
But
care.
again, as always, they draw the complete exact wrong conclusion from that. You know what I mean? It's like, this is free and insulin isn't free. And if you leave it right there, you're like, yeah, it's a great fucking question, right? Why isn't insulin free? And they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I meant, like, why aren't we charging people for the COVID vaccine? We shouldn't just be giving this shit away. Like, you can't.
No, I meant that means it's a Bill Gates, microchip that'll turn you into a lizard.
Yeah.
No, well, so, I mean, I guess one thing, vaccine is, yes, we need more access to the vaccine, obviously, but yeah, we've got a lot of people in this country who won't take it, and I agree with you. My thing is, of course, the immunocompromised people like my dad cannot develop antibodies. Like, he's had every vaccine, but he is coming out of chemo. So he was like on, did chemo and had survived cancer. Well, those folks, it takes a long time for your immune system to get back to where it needs to be to fight off something like COVID. If you got COVID, it would be even the so-called, lighter strains like Omicron. I think it would be really, really, really dangerous for him and so many other people. But the thing is the testing. If I hadn't had access, in just getting sick, to the amount of testing, was able to go to a Walgreens. They had tests. It was expensive, but if we had insurance, it was free. And I was like, hell yeah, make fucking Kaiser pay for this bullshit. I hate Kaiser. And I got 8 tests, and I was like, hell yeah, this is amazing. But if that dries up, then how the hell are we going to know? And apparently states are also stopping tracking COVID.
Right. Well, because, you can't have COVID if you don't test positive. And the people in your state can't have COVID if you don't track it. So it kind of makes it go away if you think about it. It's sort of the way like most of the men in my family approach any kind of illness. It's like, you can't have anything wrong with you if you don't go to the doctor. Because when you go to the doctor and they tell you something's wrong with you, well, now you got a problem. But as long as you stay at home and don't go to the doctor, you just keep saying, it'll be all right. And that's kind of a lot of these states' approach to COVID tracking and testing and whatnot.
But they will remind you of the flu deaths, of course, which we still track in this country. Right?
Yeah, well, those are serious.
Oh, yeah. Well, those are even worse than COVID, some would argue, who've never read anything. I hope they fucking find the money. Literally, I'm like, oh, no. Just do this. My expectations for Congress are so low at this point. I'm just like, just do this one thing, please. Can you not? We're about 1 million dead now in the richest country on earth. What the fuck? Anywho, let's move on. We've got another equally exciting and very fun story. This was the week where states continue to run roughshod over the right to an abortion. This week, Kentucky banned abortions at 15 weeks, and that's after Mississippi and Louisiana banned them at 15 weeks. Florida currently doing the same thing. Not to mention Missouri's new law forces women who have ectopic pregnancies. That's when a baby starts developing in the fallopian tubes, forcing them to carry their baby to death. That's what it is, basically. Either one or both the mom, the fetus definitely dies. Back to Kentucky, though, the state already had a ban on abortions at 20 weeks. And here was one of the few female lawmakers who also voted against this new bill, Senator Wise, great name. And here's what she had to say when her colleagues were voting for it.
Explain my no vote.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I'm a diagnostic radiologist, and diagnostic radiologists historically and in many places in this state still do all of the first trimester OB ultrasound. So I am extraordinarily personally familiar with the development of a fetus in the womb. And for you to sit here and say that at 15 weeks, a fetus has a functional heart, a 4-chamber heart that can survive on its own is fallacious. That is not true. There is no viability. You know, I look around at my colleagues on this committee. I am the only woman on this podium right now. I am the only physician sitting on this podium. This bill is a medical sham. It does not follow medicine. It does not even purport to listen to medicine. And for each and every one of my colleagues to be so willing to cast an I vote when what you are doing is putting your finger, putting your knee, putting a gun to women's heads. You are killing women because abortion will continue. Women will continue to have efficacy over their own body, whether or not you make it legal. I vote no, and I really, really apologize to the people in Kentucky that we are spending this much time and this much energy when we have families in poverty. We have single women heading households in poverty at a higher rate than any other group in the state. And you all are not addressing that. You all are making it worse. Thank you.
Woo. That was actually Senator Berg, excuse me, who was very wise, however. It's funny because Kentucky's got the leading group of poor people in the state as women, single women, more mothers. It's almost like Republicans like that. They're like, oh, yeah, on purpose. Yeah. No, that's a great stat.
Yeah, no, they did, but all the other dudes on that committee, when they met up outside, are like, boy, she's awful mouthy, huh? I don't know why we let her in here.
Why they shouldn't be in office.
10th white guy or whatever, As
Right.
a white guy, of course, I always take any opportunity to talk about abortion. But I knew as soon as, with the Supreme Court and, when we got fucked over so bad on that, well, I mean, fucked ourselves over in ways, but whatever.
Yeah, no shit.
When they took it the way that they have, and, everybody knew this was going to happen. And so none of it's surprising, but it is very alarming. And you're right, and it's been pointed out a million times over, but it deserves to be pointed out a million more. And it's that if you haven't been born yet, then nothing is more important than your life. But the moment you enter the world, all fucks are ceased to be given about you or your condition or your future or your prospects. They like poor kids, especially like black and brown kids. They don't give a fuck about them. They literally take their lunches away from them at school. If their parents can't afford, just like starve them to fucking death, fuck them over at every turn. But as long as, they're born into that life, then Jesus is cool, I guess. That's how it all. But yeah, it's so fucking.
Jesus wants more worker bees for their factories.
Right. It would be a little different if they weren't like that. Like if they took care of poor single mothers or children in poverty and all, if they supported those measures as well, it would be a very different kind of argument. It would still be bullshit in terms of, it should be up to women. It's their body and their choice. It still shouldn't be white guys making those laws and decisions. But like at least it would be a little less baldly hypocritical, but it's not. It's one of the most hypocritical
it's like
stances they have.
If Denmark were rabidly pro anti-choice, you'd be like, I get it. You kind of take care of kids from birth to death. You've got a really robust social safety net, Yeah, who wouldn't want to bring up a kid in Denmark? But we are not Denmark. We do not have that. But I understand what you're saying. And I just want to give some context to Roe v. Wade, because all of these, the bills around heartbeats, right? These motherfuckers think that if you have a heartbeat, essentially by that logic, it's like, get a job. You know what I'm saying? Like, by that time, if that life is viable, then yeah, why wait until it's born before you're sending it into, whatever menial labor job that you want? Like, they think that this fetus, sometimes even less than that, is viable outside of the womb, and it is not. And Roe v. Wade understood this, and Roe v. Wade framed this as actually a woman's privacy, her right to decide what she does with her body and what she doesn't. Now, there are limits, but the reality is 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester. That's 0 to 14 weeks, 90%. The other abortions happen because shit gets very real for many different reasons. There could be economic reasons, right? There are lack of access reasons. If you don't have access to an abortion in the first 14 weeks, obviously you would delay it. If there are economic reasons, you cannot afford an abortion, you would obviously delay it. But then there are health reasons. And the second and third trimester is when it is about the health of the baby or the fetus and the health of the mom. That's when actually abortions are arguably even more important, because they are saving lives, right? And so, but so it's like they're so stuck on the time limit and what point is it viable? And you're like, motherfucker, we've decided this. We've gone over this. And according to Roe, you're not allowed to legislate, especially in the first trimester, against abortion, but in the second, you can legislate, but very minimally, right? Very minimally when it comes to restrictions on abortions. But of course, because they're chipping away, they're shutting down clinics, the standards for clinics, then it actually only makes later term abortion, even more probable and likely. So I just want to put that out there. And I wanted to pivot, because there's a little bit more before we move on. Idaho has a 6-week abortion ban. Six weeks, but this is before many people know they're pregnant. And like Texas, it's all about bounties. So they're allowing people to sue abortion providers and get $20,000, and potentially get $20,000 for suing them. And so here's some of the debate on the Idaho state legislature floor about the parameters of this vigilante anti-choice bullshit.
I understand that someone who has committed a rape would not be able to sue if an abortion were to take place. Would a family member of said rapist be able to sue? Would they have standing?
Down for 21.
Thank you. If it is the parents, siblings, aunts and uncles, grandparents, then yes.
Same question then for incest as well?
Down 21.
Thank you. Yes.
So if I am raped and choose to have an abortion and my rapist has 10 siblings, is there anything to preclude all of them and their spouses from bringing a lawsuit for $20,000 each?
Down for 21.
I'm not sure their spouses are included in that list, but no.
Oh, not the spouses, but yes, the brothers and the sisters and the parents of the rapist can also sue if there's an abortion that takes place.
Yeah, I had either forgotten or didn't realize that this was going to get brought up, and I was actually just about to ask you about that exact law before you played that, because that is one of those things where it's like, to me, and obviously it's wholly different perspective, but to me this is one of those things that just seems so cartoonishly evil that I cannot understand how you can put these ideas forward with a straight face, even if you are anti-choice, philosophically. Like when it's framed that way explicitly to you, it could not be more black and white. They're just asking them in point blank terms. So you're telling me that if
Yeah.
I'm raped, my rapist family members can sue me for having an abortion, and then they say, yes, that is accurate. I don't know how you are not in your own mind at that point going, maybe we're the bad guys here. like, oh, when I hear it out loud, it seems kind of fucked up. Maybe
Yeah,
we should
now that you
circle
say,
back to that, but they don't. They
we're
love
gonna have
it.
to reframe that a little bit.
Yeah,
Let's
but they
take a
never
word, the
do.
rape. Yeah.
It's
No,
wild.
it's like that's what my loving God would want is
Yeah.
for a rapist family to be able to to make some money in the kingdom of heaven. Like I don't like that's in there, but it's not. I mean, I have a weird idea about when it comes to restricting women's bodies and freedoms is that, and the same thing with all the culture war bullshit, which this is not a culture war issue, but it often is wielded as such. But in terms of LGBTQ plus hate, all that stuff, I see it as like, this is when Republicans don't have any more ideas. They go back to these touchstones that are about taking away civil rights and human rights. And especially in their mind, they're like, if women were only, dropping babies like flies in the kitchen, like somehow American manufacturing would come back. Like, get the motherfucker. You guys were the ones who shipped the shit abroad and made killing on it. Like,
they either do that or they just make a new thing up completely out of thin air, like the transgender people in the bathrooms or critical race theory or some other boogeyman that they just construct whole cloth out of nothing. And if they can't think of one of those, they do what you just said and go back to the same, regressive wells over and over. Yeah, that's textbook conservative strategy there.
Before we get bring in my guests, a couple comments. Thank you, Hef, for the super chat on COVID. U.S. government, meh. That's what they're about. Grandpa Dragon 1953 on Twitch. What up? I'm always so amazed we have the money to kill people. We never have money to save people. Agreed. Unless they're unborn. If they're unborn, oh my God. But not even, because we don't have healthcare or prenatal healthcare. Jeremy Justice, thank you for the super chat. Apparently we can have COVID relief funding or Nancy Pelosi slam poetry, but we can't have both. Oh, such a tough choice. Like more Bono poems. Israel Bryson on Twitch. If a heartbeat is a requirement, removing people from life support should be illegal. The death penalty shouldn't be allowed. I mean, oh my God, remember the fucking Terry Schiavo? You old enough to remember the Terry Schiavo bullshit?
Yeah.
Remember that life support thing?
I do, yes.
Ugh. But yes, the death penalty has always been a complete hypocrisy on the right's part. Randy Greer, George Carlin, conservatives want live babies so they can train them to be dead soldiers. Oof. Always with the Carlin. So good, on point. Decepticon IT help desk, ask an anti-choicer if they've ever adopted an unwanted child, since adoption is their favorite alternative. They'll more than likely say no. Yeah. Not only that, I was watching some like I follow a lot of like abortion rights Instagram accounts, and they're great, and all the folks who are like out there in clinics defending folks and who are trying to get actual care. And there was like a meme that was like, don't tell all the antis, like the anti-choice people, about the number of frozen embryos that never actually get used from IVF. Like, oh yeah. We don't give a shit about them. They're ready to go. Like, nobody's protesting outside of an IVF clinic. Ugh.
I don't know. I feel like if they put that together, they might start. They hate stem cells and shit, right? They hate all that for the same reasons. Like, don't give them any ideas, is all I'm saying.
Exactly. We need a decoy thing, though. It's like, if we can trick them into thinking that we should be protesting, like as Carlin said, abortions that are like chicken abortions, so eggs. Like, at least, you know what I mean? Give them. They wouldn't be outside harassing real people. They'd be, harassing farmers and chickens, which is fine. All right, let's move into the sitch for the week. Super privileged to have her here. She's a Palestinian American mother and activist and executive director of Coalition for Civil Freedoms, a group with a mission to defend civil liberties and freedoms, promote a fair U.S. criminal justice system, and advocate for the rights of political prisoners targeted in the war on terror. Please welcome Lena Al-Arian. Hi,
Sorry, it
Lena.
was the I needed to unmute. Sorry. Thanks for
That's
having
okay.
me, Francesca.
No, thank you for being here. Super welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here. It's a kind of another grim anniversary. I always sort of remember as someone who was very involved in the anti-war movement and was like, if we could just protest enough, then Bush won't attack Iraq. Like, ha 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 ha. So
Exactly.
here we are again, 19 years since the invasion of Iraq. And your organization has done what I think the work that I think sadly has been left to a lot of Muslim Americans, which is protecting a community that has ever since 9/11, I mean before, but since 9/11 been vilified, spied upon, and torn apart, and demonized in so many ways. And that still continues 19 years after the invasion of Iraq, 20 however many plus years after the invasion of Afghanistan. What are the lasting impacts of the war on terror still? Like, what are the things that we're like, holy shit, we still have that vestige?
Yeah, I mean, all of it, right? All of the post 9/11 policies that have targeted Muslim Americans, that have vilified our faith, our communities, criminalized them, have seen Muslims through a security lens. We're talking about the war on Iraq, 19 years today, just as there was a shock and awe tactic in bombing Iraq. Of course, the bodies that are left behind, the death toll ranging between 500,000 to 1 million people. They never saw any justice. That shock and awe tactic was being done domestically in the United States in order to carry out this war on terror in Afghanistan, Iraq. You also have to perpetuate this Muslim terrorist myth going on in the US, that you have terrorists on the loose, that you need to catch them. And, through this counterterrorism model where you employ all these, really awful tactics like, infiltrating communities. Trevor Aronson, the journalist who's written a lot about these issues, has said that there have been, at any given point, around 15,000 informants, many of them in Muslim spaces. And so after 9/11, the US essentially created the separate justice system for Muslims, passing the Patriot Act, and raiding charities, mosques, arresting high-profile Muslim leaders, and really creating the sense of fear among the community to not speak out, to not engage politically on certain issues, to not, express dissent even on these atrocious foreign policy issues that have contributed to the oppression and death of, untold numbers of innocent people. And it's this fear that has, continues to last till this day. And my organization actually happens to be an organization led by mostly impacted people whose loved ones have been targeted unfairly and slapped with false terrorism charges and continue to be incarcerated until this day. So we advocate on behalf of 250 or so what we call Muslim political prisoners. These were people who were targeted in a tactic that we call preemptive prosecution, where they're, it's like, it's Orwellian, it's Kafkaesque, it's Philip K. Dick, it's Minority Report. I mean,
I was going to say,
being, targeted in these manufactured plots that the FBI concocts. It's like this Truman Show thing where, the FBI, they need to find terrorists. They have this enormous bloated budget, billions of dollars over 20 years. And it becomes an easy model to follow, because who's going to acquit, somebody accused of terrorism in this post 9/11 climate of fear?
Right.
And so they create these plots, and they target the most vulnerable in society, these hapless youths, a lot of times, who are drawn either to money or, a lot of times it's like this older father figure to these youths. They're so young, they're suggestible, they're vulnerable, they're poor, they don't, it's just so many ways that they incentivize them. And it's like, I liken it to the sexual predators that groom these youths. And it's in fact our government oftentimes that's radicalizing them, goading them to go along with this plot. And just, right before they're about to pull the trigger, of course, fake, then the FBI swoops in, arrests them and prosecutes them, sentences them to 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is, decades in prison.
And similar to the torture tactics abroad, which it's like there's been a almost even more of an admission that torture doesn't work, but quiet admission. There's a knowledge that entrapment schemes do not work, do not keep people safer, did not foil any plot that would not have existed were it not for an informant doing that.
Exactly.
And yet, do these kinds of informants, I mean, is there an idea or a sense that those programs are continue to this day?
Absolutely. I mean, they absolutely do. I mean, that's a sad thing is that, the people that I advocate for, they're not just the forgotten prisoners and victims of the war on terror, the victims that people never even knew existed. And you see the evidence that's brought into these cases that at trial, most people would never believe it. I mean, there's a woman who is serving a 9-year sentence for literally retweeting ISIS. I mean, it's gotten to a point. Yeah. I mean, and the judge even apparently at her sentencing likened it to Donald Trump's tweets, and it's just like, well, why isn't Donald Trump being prosecuted for this? But then unfortunately, the legal system is so broken and judges are often afraid to do the right thing that they still end up going along and giving these, horrible long sentences. But no, it doesn't work because the reality is that there isn't an actual terrorist threat. In my organization, our legal team authored a report called Inventing Terrorists. And out of 1,300 national security cases after 9/11, they found that over 94% were based on preemptive prosecution, which is essentially prosecuting ideology. And Islam in itself was deemed as a dangerous ideology. So it goes to show you that there isn't really a threat that we need to follow. But, what we've learned over the past couple of years as BLM activism and more focus on funding the police, more, a critical look at our broken legal system is that it's all about these prosecutions and convictions and not really about the truth. I mean, just, thank God for the film 13th that shows, the history of mass incarceration and, how this carceral state cares so much about locking people up over the truth.
Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, we've pivoted to new ways to track people, but the House let the Patriot Act die in 2020. I'm like, I just assumed it was still going on, but it just kind of quietly again was like, well, what was the lesson? How many innocent people, right? How many people are still fighting their cases? And it's like, no, there's no atonement. I want to get into like just a little bit about maybe your quick thoughts on like, I think nowadays they're seeing, especially with the election of Representative Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, like seeing Muslims in elected office and in these high levels and women, and Ilhan Omar wearing hijab. Like she gets so much hate, we know, but it is, as someone who I think, and obviously I can only imagine how you might feel, never had seen these people, seen Muslims in office before, it really feels like a sea change and a shift, and obviously representative of their own electorates too, and the community broadly. But what does that mean to you? What does it mean sort of politically, like that maybe we can turn this around and actually end the Islamophobia that has really poisoned our politics for so long?
Right. Unfortunately, I think I see Islamophobia alive and well, even in the coverage of Ukraine, in the way that, those refugees are deemed in a much more humane lens than refugees from Muslim countries. But with the election of Tlaib and Omar, of course, I've seen since Obama's, since he was a candidate and him being called, he's an Arab and he's a Muslim, and the whole birther movement and all of these ridiculous anti-Sharia bills that kept popping up in all these states, that we've come a little bit of away from those days. At the same time, I think what's more significant to me in their election is, not just their Muslim identity, but that they ran on highly progressive platforms. I think, especially with bringing light to issues like the human rights violations and, oppression of the Palestinian people, is quite profound. I think they show that, Muslim quote unquote leaders, these self-anointed leaders who used to try to, appeal to respectability politics, not really challenging the state, not really challenging, these post 9/11 abuses, really staying silent about them, that, there has to be a sea change there. In the last couple of years, we've seen these so-called, self-anointed Muslim leaders who went on these Israel junkets. There's this program called the Muslim Leadership Initiative that basically went on this propaganda tour in Israel that was funded by these same Islamophobic hate groups. It's very close to the Israeli military, and it was created as a tactic as a counter to the BDS movement, which is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And so a lot of these Muslim leaders came back to try to sow discord on the issue of Palestine and criticism of U.S. foreign policy and support for Israel. So I think seeing Rashida Tlaib now being outspoken on, calling out Israeli war crimes, speaking out in favor of Palestinian human rights, being a sole dissenting voice opposing things like the Iron Dome, are quite significant. Of course, they still need to come a long way. There still isn't enough, action being done to protect the rights of Muslims. They're still being targeted in these unfair cases all the time. So yeah. I would like to see more being done about domestic policies and truly ending the war on terror.
Yeah. Can you what does that look like? Can you be more specific? Like, what does that look like in terms of truly ending the war on terror?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have our wish list, right? I mean, you have to close Guantanamo Bay. You have to end the infiltration of Muslim communities by the FBI. You can no longer, send these agent provocateurs to go and entrap innocent young people. We need to end, these arbitrary material support laws where anything you do, your charity gets criminalized. I mean, one of the most atrocious cases is a case of the Holy Land Foundation 5. This was at one point the largest Muslim charity in the United States that was shut down by the Bush administration in December 2001. Their assets were seized, and it was literally declared a terrorist organization. The US government acknowledges that its leaders were simply humanitarians that, gave charity to Palestine. But by their twisted logic, Palestinians are so poor, and any outside help they get, will allow them, instead of spending their money on giving, building schools or whatever, or hospitals, will then be siphoned off to do terrorist activity. And so, because money is fungible, it's this whole ridiculous concocted story. And the leaders of that organization are serving 65-year sentences, 2 of them for literally charity. And there's, they've exhausted all legal recourse. The Supreme Court refused to take the case, and they're languishing in prison for charity. And you're seeing now where, PayPal is raising money for Ukraine. Everybody's raising money for Ukraine. But God forbid Palestinians should have any, humanitarian aid. People who are literally, in a, fish in a barrel in Gaza, who are, 2 million people trapped, can't go anywhere in one of the poorest regions in the world. So.
Right. Or if you say, I think if you say Iran in a Venmo transaction,
right.
You can't make that transaction.
Exactly.
But Matt Gaetz can say underage sex, and it's all good.
Exactly.
You talked about Ukraine a little bit, and I wanted to ask you about the double standard, and I also, Trey, feel free to jump in wherever. But I just
Mhm.
want to play something that happened this week. It's been happening a lot, but maybe sort of the lessons we need to be learning from this moment beyond. I mean, there's many lessons, but this lessons we need to be learning when it comes to treatment of refugees, no matter where they're from. Take a look. This is, I don't even care what her name is, but she's on CNN here, just sounding off about chemical weapons and who deserves them and who doesn't.
We've seen him and his allies in Syria do the same. They're clearly preparing something because they've been making a lot of noise at the UN and in the media, that Kremlin-controlled media, that the Ukrainians have all these biological and chemical weapons and that they're going to use them, which seems like fertile ground for a false flag operation. So what is NATO going to do if, it's one thing for sarin gas to be used on people in faraway Syria who are Muslim and who are of a different culture. What is Europe going to do when it's on European soil, done to Europeans?
As what? It's so far away, different culture. Humans don't react to sarin gas the way Europeans do. My God. So that's just casually Julia Joffre, I don't know. And it's like the woman next to her like nodding. So yeah, I think we've all been struck by this, and the hypocrisy is so in your face. But Lena, just your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting, and I mean, it's not really shocking. I mean, we've seen so many displays of this, so many iterations of this since the crisis in Ukraine. Oh, those people are barbaric, but these people are civilized and whatever. Now it feels real to us, and we can connect and identify with them in a way that we couldn't with these brown people. And I think any person of color can understand what the difference is, whether you're from Africa or the Middle East or, South Asia or wherever. I mean, Latin America, it's so clear. But it's like these people are Muslims. And I know she tried to like justify it on Twitter, but it's like, no, it's inherent. She's like, no, this is like, I was saying that this is like what NATO thinks. And it's like, no, I it'd be really difficult for me to see any state actually coming out and saying it so, overtly, maybe Trump, but Trump's no longer in office. But no, these are your racist thoughts. Unfortunately, you've been exposed. And this is a person who I think, when I think it was the New Yorker or whatever union tried to, said that we support freedom for Palestinians from the river to the sea. She said that this is a call for genocide because otherwise.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So, I think she showed her true colors, and I think this is a really revealing moment for many people in the media.
Yeah, and for me, like the one thing I hadn't said, when we've played clips like this before, but I used to work for Al Jazeera for AJ Plus, and the one thing even before, I've got my criticisms of them, but even before I was working there was like, it was so refreshing when you were learning about, Syria or Palestine or Venezuela or Argentina or whatever country. There were reporters who were from the region. They spoke the language, and you were like, oh my God, an outlet is making an effort to hire experts who have some amount of background or minimally see the people of this region as human. And like, then you're just every single, like 9 times out of 10, the people who are putting their foot in their mouth like this are white people. And they're like, yeah, man, that's what happens when you don't hire folks who are from a diverse array of places, who are or from the places that they're even talking about or purport to know about. Anywho, Trey, any thoughts you want to jump in?
I'm sorry if this is backtracking too much, but we were talking about Omar earlier and Tlaib. Would be curious what your thoughts are on the new Republican challenger to Omar, Shukri. I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm even going to try it. But I'm talking about? She's a Muslim American military veteran who's a conservative. Air Force, I think, Somali born. Have you seen her? I was wondering what you.
I mean, I haven't, but I think they've tried to primary her 2 years ago, and similar type of another Somali candidate that was like the you know, the good Muslim candidate or whatever, you know, not the
Yeah.
troublemaker that's in hand. And, you know, they lost, and I'm hoping that this person will lose as well. But I mean, it's so clear, right? What makes a good Muslim in this country is somebody in the military, somebody who's engaging in killing other Muslims abroad, somebody who's working to help the government, you know, track down these alleged extremists at the mosque, you know, because a guy grew a beard or said "Free Palestine" at a rally. So it's
Right.
very clear what you know, type of politics that the government wants Muslims to embody in this country, and that's exactly that exact profile that you described says it all.
Yeah, well, they love that whole like one of the good ones thing. You know,
Exactly.
they're
Oh yeah.
they're real
Totally.
big into that. Anytime they can get a candidate like that, they jump all over it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And you
exactly.
see
And
that in other like minority communities too. You know,
Yeah,
they
right.
get token whatever. You know who.
Yeah.
absolutely, they can't be racist.
Exactly.
So I wanted to. There's so much to ask, but I guess I wanted to talk about January 6th a little bit, you know, and get your thoughts on, you know, in the aftermath, there was a lot of sort of ratcheting up of similar language that was, you know, utilized against Muslim Americans after 9/11 as to like, okay, domestic terrorists, blah, blah, blah. And objectively, I'm not going to use the word terrorist, but anti-government white supremacist extremist violence is the number one, you know, according to the FBI, the number one fastest growing threat in the United States. And you know, it probably is if the FBI is saying it, and you're like, I don't know if they have really like an agenda to go against white nationalists, because they've pretty much been okay with them up until this point. So it must be really bad for them to be flagging it. And as we saw on January 6th, look at what happens. But in terms of actually trying to, you know, root out, de-radicalize, if you will, if I can even say that, to try and, you know, stop some of the extremism, the white nationalist extremism that, yeah, scares me. And I think most people who listen to the show fucking far more than anything else. What are your thoughts? How do you see the way and the role that, like, if the government could play any kind of positive role in trying to bring people back from that kind of radicalization, that kind of violence, what would that look like?
To be honest with you, I look at it a little bit differently, with extreme skepticism. And I think that the term radicalization or whatever, all of that is extremely vague, and it's a way to avoid talking about political issues. What is it that is driving these people to some sort of ideology or action? What is it that they care about? You know, what is it that's, you know, angering them in terms of policy? Not just like they're radical, they're insane, they're horrible, just, you know, without any explanation, without any context. And so what we've seen post 9/11 is that Muslims were just the beginning. You know, Muslims were radical, Muslims had a problematic ideology, Muslims had a problematic politics, but we always contended that these, you know, policies to infiltrate, to, you know, arrest people on crimes of ideology, on thought crimes, were always going to be expanded to other communities, non-Muslim communities. And so what does the government do? I mean, the government is interested always in expanding its own powers and, you know, developing this expansive spying surveillance program. They don't want to give that up. They want to know exactly what people are saying. They want to spy on them, and they want to, you know, to control them, to control what we think, what we feel, and to not be able to, you know, resist any policies that may be unpopular, that may, you know, hurt regular Americans. And so what we've seen in this Michigan governor kidnapping plot, you know, if you guys are familiar with that case, this is something that the FBI called a slam dunk case. I mean, everybody's like, holy shit, like they wanted to kidnap this governor. And guess what? We find out a few months later, 12 FBI informants and several more undercover agents concocted the entire thing from A to Z. These were people who were like upset about like COVID, like restrictions. Like it was so dumb, but they needed to exaggerate this threat in this country and concocted this whole thing. You know, among
That's
the
wild.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, there's an article in The Guardian. I highly recommend that your viewers read it. There's a case that we in the coalition talk about, which is this Kansas militia. These are people who were radicalized by, Donald Trump's rhetoric in the summer of 2016 after the Pulse nightclub. The guy was a Muslim. They were like, oh my God, we need to get Muslims and whatever. And yes, like they hated Islam. They were anti-Muslim. I am Muslim, but I believe it in a person's freedom of speech, even if it's to not like, a certain people or to be opposed to them, as long as you're not taking any actual steps to commit a crime. That's your freedom to believe whatever you want. I mean, that's what this country is supposedly built on. And so what does the government do? They bring in this, he was a homeless guy, an informant. This was in Kansas City, Missouri, and they pay him $60,000 they're like literally like militia rejects. Like the militia didn't even want them. So they were like kicked out of the
They tried to coup Venezuela. They couldn't do that. They got out of prison.
Yeah. And this informant introduced these three guys. They didn't even know each other. And he told them like, this needs to be your target, the Somali like housing complex. This is what you're going to do. And, started pushing them to go along with this plot. These were people who had substance abuse problems, history of, mental health issues, really like just these hapless guys that were very easily manipulated into this plot. And that's what the government's doing, is truly scraping the bottom of the barrel. And so they ended up being charged, convicted on this, domestic terrorism case. And people actually believed that they were going to bomb this plot. And I mean, they were going to go along with this plot to bomb these Somalis. And, it seems almost counterintuitive, like you guys are Muslims and you're defending these people wanted to blow up, but it's the exact tactics that were used on Muslim communities that are now being, done, outside of the community. So for us, it's about the principle, defending everyone's rights from being targeted in these phony sting operations.
My God, that yes, that story, especially the Whitmer and the kidnapping plot story, that was this week, and
Right.
I've yet to wrap my brain around it. But yes, the fact that you and your organization is actually, has a principled stand when it comes to these BS entrapment plots is, I mean, like, just the idea that the same race would be.
Yeah, there's no entrapment defense. As long as, I mean, it's, I can go on and on about this, but yeah, I mean, you have to defend the principle because, one day it's your community, the next it's another vulnerable community. There are no lessons being learned and it's going to just continue. So, I mean,
what's crazy to me, what I'm saying is like the same folks would never extend that principle to Muslim Americans. The like white nationalists, those folks, they would never be like, no, their whole thing as, January 6th insurrectionists are getting locked up is, no, we don't deserve this. Black and brown people deserve to be locked up. We don't deserve to be locked up. These conditions are, this sandwich is awful, right? Meanwhile, prison abolitionists or people who believe in reform are like, see what we've been talking about? We actually believe that everyone should not be in these kinds of conditions, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I mean,
that's a challenge because it's never gonna, passing any sort of like domestic terrorism policies and bills or whatever. Of course, that's always going to come primarily to crack down on Black and brown communities, but people don't realize that it's being expanded outward to whites. I mean, to put it plainly.
Yeah, no, and like, yes, I think that's really fascinating, and we got to dig and talk more about that story. I guess any final thoughts? We have to move on to our last. I mean, last thing I just wanted to say is, it'd be great in a really good way to root out the so-called radicals, or like especially root out white supremacy, not run white supremacist candidates for office, not keep allowing representatives who supported overturning a democratic election to hold office, to still be there. Like, the collusion is so, I mean, it is very funny. It is the whole like idea that the FBI is going to root out white supremacy is a little bit of the like, the cops are going to investigate their own murders. I mean, that's all it is. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
Lena, final thoughts? Anything you wanted to raise?
We have a lot of work ahead of us. I mean, it's really hard to talk about these issues. People don't realize that it's happening. I think Islamophobia is still so alive and well that people, feel that it just doesn't affect them. And so you see a Muslim talking about this and it's sort of like, shrug, and unfortunately, these political prisoners that we support, I mean, and advocate for, there's really no hope for them to ever see the light of day in many cases. Some of them were just children. I mean, you look at their age on the Bureau of Prisons website where they're spending decades in federal prison, and it's just so sad how young they were. Some of them, a mother of this one guy says that he was as young as 15 years old when an older FBI, or actually it was an undercover NYPD officer and FBI agents were coming to manipulate him. He was an only child. And so
Jesus.
I would really love for people to come and get to know our work and to just build awareness and read these so-called terrorism stories and arrest with skepticism, because I promise you that there's always more to the story. And if you dig deeper, it very easily unravels.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I do want to keep you on for our final fun segment to palate cleanse. But how can people find you and your work?
We're at civilfreedoms.org, www.civilfreedoms.org. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have our socials. So we're not great at it, but we try, and reach out to us.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and your website's great, and it explains all the different campaigns and everything you guys are working on. So thank you for this and for joining us. And let's do our final fun segment, guys. Let's switch it up. We've got a segment we do bring this back, which is Sex, Elect, Overthrow. Works like Fuck, Marry, Kill. And we usually do politicians or, I don't know, Fox News hosts, etc., which is always fun and awful. But this is a little different. I kind of like our choices this evening. Given that there are a number of shows right now on the streaming services about different con artists, seems to be the renaissance of the con artists, which I much prefer to the true crime renaissance, not into murderers. Con artists, a little more interesting. I want to know, who would you guys sex, elect, overthrow when it comes to when it comes to Anna Delvey, the Tinder swindler, or Elizabeth Holmes? This is Sex, Elect, Overthrow. Anna Delvey of Inventing Anna scammed banks, but also socialites, also her friends. Did they deserve that? Did she get them free champagne often? I don't know. She's got a terrible accent, and I can't do it. But after you see the show, you cannot stop doing it. It's like really, really hard to stop. It's
You
like
could totally do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's British, but also a Valley Girl, but like
Yeah.
German as well.
Wow.
Okay, so we got Anna Delvey. We've got Tinder swindler. So Shimon Hayut, who convinced women he was dating to give them money because he convinced them he was like some big time diamond dealer or like some rich guy. Roll up in like a private jet, take him, wine him and dine him, and then be like, oh my God, they're after me, the bad guys, because I'm really important. Can you open a credit card for me? And then they would open a new account and then do the same thing over again with another woman. So just kind of like lily padding and leapfrogging from scam to scam to scam, which honestly to me sounds like a lot of work. So I'm going to give him some credit there. And she's also the subject of a Hulu show, which is honestly one of my favorites, The Dropout, Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, of Just One Drop of Blood, and I can test you for all of these things. Can you test for sociopathy? Because that's what you have, crazy bitch. No. So what do we think? Who do we send sexy text messages to? Allay their, hot and bothered feelings. Elect them to office. or done, overthrow, gone, memory shoot. Trey? Oh
Yeah.
no, Lena, whoever wants to go.
I would sext Elizabeth Holmes because I don't know. I mean, at least she didn't steal from the poor, as far as I know. And that's probably the one redeeming thing is she, defrauded investors. But that's, admittedly, I didn't watch any of these shows, but I'm, been
No,
reading
it's cool. You can go on your gut. So you sext Elizabeth Holmes. Who do you elect and who do you overthrow?
I elect Anna Delvey because her promises are, I'm going to wire you money, like they are you might as well elect her because she's her promises are as worthless as so many of our politicians. So she will be right at home with them.
I'm going to wire you the relief money. It's coming through. Once my inheritance kicks in, you're going to have the COVID relief. That's what our government does already. You're totally right.
Exactly. And overthrow the Tinder swindler because he served 5 fucking months in prison in Israel, which holds Palestinian children for months or years in indefinite administrative detention in military prison without charges. So he should be overthrown.
There he is, but look at his bleach blonde tips.
Oh wow. He would be a good 90s boy band,
I mean, that face is so trustworthy, but it definitely isn't the face of a millionaire. I'm like, you don't have money. Trey, what about you? Who are we thinking? On the left, Anna Delvey. In the middle, Tinder swindler. On the right, Elizabeth Holmes.
Oh, I don't know. I guess I would try to sext Anna Delvey, but I don't think she would go for that because I'm trash and she don't traffic with trash, so I probably wouldn't have much success on that front. But elect, I mean, I don't want to elect any of them, but I mean, I feel like Elizabeth Holmes is absolutely Senate material in this country. You know what I mean? Like she seems like a senator type to me, based on how our senators be. Sort of just had a totally bullshit idea that she got everybody to give her a bunch of, investment capital for. It's very American dream writ large right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess her and overthrow, does it mean, is the implication that you then take their place? Because that's what I think when I think overthrow.
Oh, I like that.
You know what I mean? Because it's still the Tinder swindler. Because I wouldn't mind lying my way onto some rich girl's boat or whatever he was doing. I don't know, but I'm just kidding. Fuck that guy too. But yeah, that's my answer either way.
Okay, that's really good.
But is that your intention though with overthrow? Like, because when I heard overthrow, I interpreted it as replace.
I like that.
I like that and replace.
Right, like depose.
Yeah, right.
Like install anew.
Yeah.
No, I think overthrow is just done.
Get rid of.
We have no plan for what comes next. It's sort of a free for all.
Well, it's still that guy.
It's still that guy. Okay, so we overthrow him. We're making. Is it Delvey's? No. Holmes is Senate. Yeah, no, I see that. Holmes is absolutely could lie her way into the Senate
for sure.
See, that's I do think if we're going with skill and it comes to electing, obviously the cynical part of me is like, it's got to be Delvey or Holmes because they are I want to know who's the biggest sociopath. This is my thing. I don't know who the biggest sociopath is. I know that Delvey is still convinced of her own lies. I think here's what I will say. This is hard.
Is it between the two of them or the three of them that you're deciding?
They're all in play for me, but here's what I will say. I'm going with this. Obviously, okay, Elizabeth Holmes needs a second chance. I think she obviously people got hurt. People definitely got hurt. If the show is real, even one of her scientists committed suicide because he was in a horrible position because of one of the researchers. That being said, I would say you're right. She's electable. Let's give her another chance. She can do some like magic hat trick, No, I don't. I fucking hate Elizabeth Holmes. God damn it.
Yeah, I
I
don't like
fucking
her
hate-
either. I said I didn't want to elect any of them. I'm just saying I could see she would fit right in on Capitol Hill. Is all
Okay,
I was saying.
let's go. Let's overthrowing Elizabeth Holmes. We're done. Put her out of her misery. She's never going to be Steve Jobs. We're going to sext the Tinder swindler because I really would like to go on a private jet too. Like it'd be fun. I don't know. We could go to the Super Bowl. I don't know where we would go. We go somewhere dope. But like I'm not gonna open you a bank account, dude. But let me hold your money for a little bit. And then you elect Anna Delvey because she scammed banks and socialites, and similar to what Lena said, they kind of deserved it. And I do think she'd be Trumpian in like in a way maybe I could get down with. Like,
so I'm not that familiar with. I watched Inventing Anna. I didn't watch the other two shows. I remember when they were actual stories and heard about them. So I'm sure they're like I didn't know about the scientists killing themselves. I'm sure there's a lot of shit I'm overlooking here or just am ignorant about. But all three of them, their primary victims were like mostly rich people, right? What weren't they? Like they defrauded and fucked over rich people. Because if that's true, I don't really care too much, frankly. They're all three pieces of shit, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over someone getting, screwed out of their art collection or whatever the hell happened. Like
Elizabeth Holmes, arguably, there were people who were given false positives on their blood work, and like that was, the harm that was done.
Well, that ain't cool.
But the reason these people have shows in the first place is precisely because of what you're saying, Trey.
Yeah.
Because the number of people who scam the elderly out of their retirement savings on a random phone call, like so many of those. But that is a very depressing series that nobody wants to watch. And it's like, oh man, Nana lost all her money. Like, like nobody wants to watch that shit.
Did you see that movie? I Care a Lot. Did you see that?
No.
Netflix movie? Yeah, it's where Rosamund Pike is one of those people that you're talking about.
Oh,
and it's fucked up. But it's weird because it's like you're supposed to be rooting for it. Certain parts, she's like an anti-hero, but there's no hero. She's just fucking over old people, and it's just a colossal piece of shit. But it's like you're supposed. It's a weird movie. Not a huge fan. Anyway, I apologize for that.
I should have known that. Of course, a streaming service was already going to do a dramatized version of exactly what I just said.
Yeah, they did.
Well, anyway,
but it's telling that like we haven't seen it or heard about it, but we know about Inventing Anna in the Tinder. So
Inventing Anna, as we talked about this before the show, too many episodes, little too long, and my God, like I just they come away, the main journalist and the lawyer come away just like fawning over her and actually loving her. She didn't even buy them champagne or handbags.
Mm-hmm.
She was just captivating you. Anyway, Shonda Rhimes, you're great, but I have problems with this series. Lena Al-Arian, thank you so much for joining me for the Bitchuation Room. That super does it. Everybody follow Lena, follow CCF, and thanks for being on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, take good care. And Trey Crowder, I'm going to see you in a little bit, and I want to talk DeSantis and Disney very briefly.
All right.
But where can people find you and your work?
Mostly just my name on whatever social thing you use. If you look me up by Trae Crowder, as you see it right there below my face, and you'll find me. YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. Got podcasts, doing all kinds of stuff all the time. So
how many times have you had COVID, Trey?
I have, knock on wood, I have not gotten COVID yet.
You've been touring this whole
tour
time,
and
and
do
you
live shows. Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, I'm triple vax, but I know that doesn't. I don't know.
You sanitize mics? I think I got fucked because I didn't sanitize my mic.
I mean, you
wipe it between, or you think it gets wiped?
No, I should have had it 4 times probably by now because I say again, I'm trash. I don't, but I don't know. Got lucky, but yeah, I'll see you on the bonus bish. Is that what
the bonus bish? You got it.
Got it.
I just need to make that the slogan. Bonus bish. Get Trey's voice in it, and it'll be great. Oh my God, you guys! Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sticking around for this show back. I hope I've done you right. I know I have, even though I'm in a COVID haze, a brain fog. Now I can blame it on COVID. From now on, it's just going to be like, oh my God, brain fog. Do you have long COVID, Francesca? No, but whatever. Brain fog. I'm still going to say brain fog. Thank you guys so much for all of your comments. Charmed Chaos. Patriot Act and its several renewals have some real draconian policies in it. Camperman 5000. Funny how inalienable rights are constantly alienated. Inalienable. ZKR99 need to give these nuts a secret mission to improve wildlife habitat or something, right? We need to be like the extremists in the Everglades. Like, I don't know. What else can we do? Just something where they actually like the extremist weather. The weather is extreme. The weather is being radicalized. Can we de-radicalize that? Okay, you know what I'm saying. And you guys, as always, we're going to queue up the goddamn fart song, but I have not actually queued it up. So give me 1 second. But I want to thank all y'all for being so generous, for donating, for being patrons. Hang on. This is what happens when you take a week off. But did you take a week off? Not really. No, I didn't. Did I still do work? Yeah, I did. This is Lay Fart Song. Yay! Thank you so much to all of the patrons who give it $10 or more. New patrons: Trey Davis, Chris Dickey, Kelly Brashear, Devel Patel. To the big tippers: Joseph L, Karen K, Robert G. To the Twitch subs: Metal Turtle 571, Naked Crab, Aussie Plant Dragon, Squirrely Coney, Harry Balsich, Just Czar, Johnny Appleseed Walker, PC Load, Letter 2, Fat Guy Named Tiny, Willie Gus, Trizelda 1, Hunger Games 1989, Thunderous Dragon, My Ass Sis Dragon, Chester Pound 623. Thank you to the Super Chats, Hef, Jeremy Justice, Decepticon IT Help Desk, and everybody else. Finally, I wanted to say, if you are a patron at $10 or more, I wanted to sweeten the pot for y'all and make a habit of shouting out people's birthdays. So please let me know. I put a calendar in the Patreon. Throw your birthday up there if you are a patron, and I will shout it out every Sunday, and we can have a nice little like birthday thing. Maybe we'll do it in the bonus. Maybe we'll do it before. I don't know, but I want to give you birthday loves if it is your birthday. And thank you to everyone who makes this show possible, to Paige Oamek, to Maximillien Inhoff, to Alexandra Ornes on the other side of the chat. We stream every Sunday, 5/8 Eastern on YouTube and Twitch. We are also available as a podcast on all the podcast platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Bitchuation Pod, on TikTok and Instagram at Franny Fio. And remember, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, and don't just bitch about it. Be about it. I'll see you in the bonus, y'all. Bye.